Together, we will make America great again.
RPN is not responsible for the views, actions, statements, or opinions of its guests, advertisers, or even its viewers. The information contained in this program is not to be confused with medical or legal advice. An appearance on this platform is not necessarily an endorsement, but as always, we encourage you to do your own research. Enjoy the show. Well, good evening, everyone. And of course, welcome back to another very exciting episode of Red Pill News Live. Good evening, all of you. Do me a favor, hit that like button. Help us out by sharing that show. Hit the thumbs up, hit the red pill, hit the upvote, whatever it might be. All right, we are today going to continue our ongoing conversation about the raid of Fulton County election officials' offices. We're going to be taking a look at the warrant itself. We're going to be talking about the various charges that were used to bring the warrant. We're going to be looking at the reactions from local, national, and various other state politicians as well, because they are absolutely freaked out. And as you can see from my thumbnail, the lovely and vivacious Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, a woman who would not normally be present at a raid of a county elections office, was there and is integrally involved in the investigation. My friends, that can mean only one thing: that this is about so much more than just some ballots in Fulton County. All right, so do me a favor, sit back, relax, and of course, grab your popcorn, because we're going to get into it right about now. All right, my friends, welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much. Scalded Welk, thank you for the cookie, just because you are one of the best channels around. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. Really does mean a lot. Thank you very much, everyone. Oh my gosh, I'm having such a good time. There are so many different things that I want to talk about. And of course, we only have very, very little time. But let us begin, first of all, by mentioning the sponsor of today's program. That's going to be, my friends, right here. Please take a listen and consider supporting. For decades, our dietary guidelines have told Americans the same tired old story: low fat, low salt, eat less. While at the same time, the food supply was quietly being filled with seed oils, chemical additives, and a lot of ultra-processed junk that was engineered to hijack your biology. Well, RFK Jr. and HHS have finally released some new dietary guidelines, and for the very first time, the federal government is finally admitting the truth. Bad food is what is driving chronic disease, while kimchi is finally being recognized for its gut health benefits. I just love the fact that this new food pyramid is inverted, because it's flipping everything on its head. These new guidelines pull America back to real food, while warning against the foods that are destroying us. Because real damage isn't always visible. The problem is the damage that occurs underneath. The inflammation, the blood sugar instability, hormone disruption, metabolic dysfunction. And RFK isn't just talking about this, he lives it.
Mainly meat and then fermented vegetable, anything fermented. So a lot of kimchi and all kinds of fermented vegetables. And it's really, I would say it's dramatically changed my, everything.
But the only issue is kimchi is not easy to eat every day. So now you can get all of the benefits of kimchi in a convenient daily capsule from Kimchi One. Kimchi One helps restore what modern food destroys, delivering kimchi's unique probiotic strains to strengthen your gut barrier, flush out the toxins, and reduce body fat. In a world built on fake food, give your gut real protection. And today you can get an exclusive offer by clicking the link below for 25% off your entire order. Or to get an even better deal, Call my friends at Brightcore for up to 50% off your order and get free shipping. So give them a call now at 888-383-5996. Once again, that's 888-383-5996. And thank you so much to Brightcore for sponsoring this program. All right, welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much. As you can see, Don Lemon is still on screen because, yes, we are still on Don Lemon arrest watch. Please, if anybody has a problem with Don Lemon being on screen, describe to them exactly why that is there. It is a form of civil disobedience and a remembrance of what Don Lemon and those insurrectionists did when they rushed into that church and they deprived those Christian parishioners of their constitutional right to use their freedom of speech and to worship in whatever way they choose. Cyrus the Great says, here's a random thing. My daughter, 15 years old, gave me a selenium supplement. I was shocked at the sudden metabolic difference I had just from selenium. Why is that? Selenium is a nutrient that is necessary, and a lot of people are deficient in it. I don't know the exact mechanism of it, but I've heard that a lot of people do not get enough selenium. So I'd have to do a little bit more research to tell you exactly what it's doing in your body, but I know that it is something that you need, everybody needs. So anyways, I'm glad that you've had a good reaction to it. All right, so first of all, I wanted to play this clip for you of President Trump in a cabinet meeting talking about the last time he was at a cabinet meeting and he fell asleep. I thought it was the funniest thing. Take a listen.
Ask a couple of people to say a few words. We're not going to go through the whole table because the last time we had a press conference, it lasted for 3 hours. And some people said he closed his eyes. Look, it got pretty boring. In all fairness, I love these people. But there's a lot of people. It was a little bit at the boring side. But I didn't sleep. I just closed them because I wanted to get the hell out of here. Some of them, I didn't sleep, by the way. I don't sleep much. But, you know, it's funny. Some of them got me in a blink. You know, when you go like, you know, and they took me as at the closed segment of my cycle. And they said he's sleeping. And besides that, Marco, between these two guys, if I was sleeping, they'd be waking me up very fast. They'd be knocking me, come on, you got to wake up, boss. But no, we have...
Oh, my God. President Trump has such a good sense of humor. And speaking of sense of humor, we have another plane, again, Air Force One, this time being spoofed as Vance 2, making yet another Sky Vance art project. This time it's not Fat Vance, it's not Bald Vance, it is actual J.D. Vance as he exists today. We've only got half of the picture right here. But now this is the second J.D. Vance art in as many days. And then we also have a third instance, only this time it's not Air Force One. This time it is two VC-25s, and they are again using spoofed data to once again make the fat J.D. Vance meme. And God, I just love it. It makes you wonder. You know, like what's coming? What does J.D. Vance have in store for us? Oh, Core Cousin says, I caught it on ADSB today. That's awesome, dude. Very, very cool. So, and they keep getting better. They keep getting more detailed. But anyways, this is like the Banksy of pilots here doing this stuff here. All right. Now, let us first of all talk about President Trump's pick for the brand new position at the Department of Justice. This is the first ever Assistant Attorney General to investigate fraud nationwide. President Trump has chosen a U.S. attorney by the name of Colin McDonald. Now, this new position, I wasn't aware of this last night. I thought maybe it wasn't going to be Senate confirmed because I didn't think that assistant attorney generals had to be confirmed. But I guess this is going to be a Senate confirmed choice. And Senate Majority Leader Thune has promised they're actually going to confirm him. So anyways, President Trump said, I am pleased to nominate Colin McDonald to serve as the first ever Assistant Attorney General to National Fraud Enforcement, a new division at the Department of Justice, which I created to catch and stop fraudsters that have been stealing from the American people. My administration has uncovered fraud schemes in states like Minnesota and California, where these thieves have stolen hundreds of billions of taxpayer dollars. Colin McDonald is a very smart, tough, and highly respected America First federal prosecutor who has successfully delivered justice in some of the most difficult and high-stakes cases our country has ever seen. Together, we will end the fraud and restore the integrity to our federal programs. Congratulations, Colin. Stop the scam. Now, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche also posted and showed his support. He said, Colin is a rock star who was instrumental in our team's mission of making America safe again. So Colin was part of the plan when they first came in to do what you're seeing out on the streets right now, rounding people up, sending out ICE to these various areas, et cetera, deciding who they were going to prosecute. He is a consummate protector who loves God, family, and country, and will serve the president and the American people well. Now, this new Assistant Attorney General's position is going to begin, first of all, in Minnesota, where we have seen fraud probably exposed to the greatest degree. Now, it has all the benefits, all the resources, all the authority of a special counsel, but with two crucial differences, Vice President Vance said. Number one, it will be run out of the White House. That is awesome. So this is a position specifically seeking to get rid of fraud and prosecute people for fraud, beginning in Minnesota, run out of the White House. He'll be probably working with the president, working with J.D. Vance every single day, and it will be under the supervision of both of them. And then number two, it's actually constitutionally legitimate. As you guys may know, the special counsel statute has some major constitutional questions. When we get the bad guys, we want to make sure that we get them permanently and that they don't have some legal technicality that they can get out of, which is why we set it up as an associate attorney general. Now, I did a little bit of digging on who Colin McDonald is. It seems that he's being a U.S. attorney in California, but he's gone after positions of politicians and people in positions of public trust who have abused their position. The stuff that he has done as a U.S. attorney, he seems to be very well respected and a very honest individual. So I think that given everything that we know about what's being rolled out right now, I think this is shaping up to be a perfect thing for America. All right. Now, I'd also like to show you guys this video. We've played it before, but I think that it's only right to begin our segment on Georgia by remembering this classic tune right here about Fulton County, Georgia, and Fannie Willis.
Now I say is she a boat rigger, but fatty only make my lead bigger. Now I say is she a boat rigger, but fatty only make my lead bigger. Get down, girl, go ahead, get down. 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 Fanita thought always at the beauty salon with a baby Louis Vuitton under her underarm. She said, talk to Waka Flock, I could really do harm. For a case, I got a lot, I could blow up the spot like a bomb. But I'm looking for the one, have you seen her? She went and put my whole team under subpoena. Diva, Friday, Felicia, poor kids, in charge of Donald Trump and niggas for bullshit. Indict Gucci Mane and chase it for some pain. She think it's all a game, but rap with no shame. She get up on TV, they all know her name. If you play in Fulton County, then you better get paid. You know why? Cause the DA corrupt. Yo, from what I heard, Fatty got a baby by Mondo. And Loomis said she got a trapped house in a condo. She don't care whatever said, long as she flopped though. Now I say is she a boat rigger, but Fatty only make my lead bigger. Now I say is she a boat rigger, but Fatty only make my lead bigger. Get down, girl, go ahead, get down. 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 13 counts, she getting paid to pounce. And for 13 counts, I know somebody paying top to charge whoever he says. Another DA in the pop that handle all of his biz. You will see her at the courthouse, call her Fatty Willis. Charge another rapper cause you know she out to get us. She even charge her president if you could pay the money. Election interference done deal for the money. She walk around looking like Trap Pole with the money. She got a new week, got white pole with the money. If you ain't no punk, holla, we want D-Trump. We want D-Trump, yeah. It's something that you need to have. Cause when we get revenge, we gon' kick some ass. 13 counts, got paid for every count straight into bank accounts. Now I say is she a boat rigger, but Fatty only make my lead bigger. Now I say is she a boat rigger, But fatty only make my lead bigger. Get down, girl, go ahead, get down. Get down, girl, go ahead, get down. Get down, girl, go ahead, get down. Get down, girl, go ahead, get down.
Yeah! I love this song. Absolutely love this song. And I love what is happening right now in Fulton County, Georgia. Now, I woke up this morning, just happened to see this tweet from our man, Eagle Ed Martin. Shares this photo of himself with Sidney Powell. I don't think that there is any coincidence that he shared this particular photograph this morning after Fulton County, Georgia was raided. 700 boxes or so were taken from Fulton County's oh, Muffin, watch out, honey. Watch out. From Fulton County, brought probably back to Washington, D.C., and here they are. He just says, "Good morning, America. How are you?" We're doing good. We're doing so good. Now, there's also been something going around the last 2 days. Right now, there is an ongoing lawsuit. Eric Coomer from Dominion Voting Systems is suing Patrick Byrne. And Patrick Byrne and his lawyer just had the opportunity to depose Eric Coomer. During that deposition, even though we haven't seen the actual transcript yet, Patrick Byrne had reported that Eric Coomer admitted under oath during his deposition to discussing the voting equipment, adjudication software, and source code with foreign nationals, which included Serbians who could remotely troubleshoot Dominion Voting Systems material and equipment from in their Denver office. And this is a major contradiction of everything Eric Coomer has said over the years. Also, things that were said by the CEO, the former CEO, John Poulos, of Dominion Voting Systems. Charlie Kane is the attorney for Eric Coomer, and allegedly he also assaulted Patrick Byrne's attorney, our friend Peter Tickton, several times after he lost his motion to suppress questions to Eric about Serbia, China, and Venezuela. Now, I was waiting to talk about this until we got a transcript or something to confirm it. But Eagle Ed Martin, on his personal account, shared this and says important under oath. So that makes me think that everything that was reported is exactly what was testified to by Eric Coomer under oath during his deposition. That does not bode well for Eric Coomer or for the people in Fulton County, Georgia. Now, continuing, Dominion Voting Systems is obviously about a lot more than just the election in Georgia. Dominion Voting Systems equipment was in use in many different places throughout the country. In every single location where it was implemented, we had a lot of concerns, and there were many different things that we saw back on election night in 2020 that gave us pause and made us believe that, yes, the election was in fact fraudulent. Over the years, more and more information has come out, and I want to remind everybody, considering the fact that Tulsi Gabbard was there last night during the seizure of the 700 boxes, computers from Fulton County, phones from Fulton County. Remember, during their communications of Fulton County elections officials, they admitted to the fact that the vote counts were off, the ballots were not correct, that they didn't have the proof, the poll tapes, et cetera, et cetera. About a year ago, Tulsi Gabbard, in a cabinet meeting with President Trump, specifically went on record and talked about the DNI's report on the insecurity of electronic voting machines, of which Dominion Voting Systems machines are just some of them. Take a listen.
I've got a long list of things that we're investigating. We have the best of the best going after this, election integrity being one of them. We have evidence of how these electronic voting systems have been vulnerable to hackers for a very long time and vulnerable to exploitation to manipulate the results of the votes being cast. which further drives forward your mandate to bring about paper ballots across the country so that voters can have faith in the integrity of our elections.
Now, Tulsi Gabbard's DNI report on the insecurity of electronic voting machine equipment is very important, and her presence at Fulton County during the raid does not bode well for anybody who might be involved with any of this stuff. Keep in mind, we also just recently had the operation in Venezuela, directly leading to President Trump hinting that there were things learned from Maduro regarding Smartmatic voting systems, which is the software which was implemented on Dominion voting machines. Now, I would also like to take you to the deposition of John Poulos, the Dominion voting system CEO. This is back in Michigan after the 2020 election, and John Poulos committed perjury in the midst of this deposition.
Systems are, by design, meant to be used as closed systems that are not networked, meaning they are not connected to the internet. There is no internet connectivity at all. They are not designed to be connected to the outside world through either an internet connection or any other external connectivity device.
Dominion have any way to remotely access any of the information on any of the equipment or have remote access within the machines themselves?
No.
Does anybody have access to the best of your knowledge?
When I was in the Senate in the Oversight Committee, we did Dominion. It was published, recorded, and it should be online. The president of Dominion testified, and so did his engineer or software maker. And the questions were centered around whether or not there was access to the internet on these machines that Dominion made. He said no, and it was a lie.
John Poulos continually repeated that lie. It's been proven in multiple venues, in multiple ways since that time, that what he said in the midst of that deposition under oath was not true. Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, has also released that report, once again reinforcing that fact. Tulsi Gabbard was present in Fulton County yesterday during the seizure of not only elections equipment, but also ballots, poll tapes, affidavits, absentee ballots. I mean, you name it. They took everything.
Election day in a precinct, are your machines hooked up to the internet?
No, not by any stretch. We go through a number of certifications, government certifications, and the first one is at a federal level. So those standards mandate that election systems, such as ours, are designed to work in a closed system.
And those standards were totally broken because the various agencies that were supposed to ensure that what John Poulos tested to was true, it just simply wasn't happening. All of these systems were uncertifiable and they were not up to date. So Tulsi Gabbard there last night points to the fact that she is taking a pivotal role in not only this investigation, but in what she's already stated, the election security effort by President Trump to ensure that elections held in the United States of America are free, fair, and trustworthy. So she was there protecting the integrity of our elections against interference, including operations on targeting voting systems, databases, and election infrastructure. She has and will continue to take action on President Trump's directive to secure our elections and work with interagency parties to do so. That is a direct quote from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, a senior government official with the ability and the authority to speak on it. Now, I'm not the only one who noticed that Tulsi Gabbard was there last night. Mark Warner, Senator Mark Warner, is also somebody who noticed she was there last night, and he's very nervous about that fact. Here he is speaking to reporters earlier this morning.
Of National Intelligence that is affirmatively moved to cut back the Foreign Malign Influence Center on elections.
All right, so he said if Tulsi Gabbard was there, then that means that they must believe that there was a foreign malign influence on her election. That is true. But there is another reason that Tulsi Gabbard would be there, and it ties directly into the grand conspiracy. Of course, that which we've spoken about on many occasions. But of course, if that's the case, Mark Warner and many others are in far more trouble than they would like to admit.
What the heck is she doing on the FBI serving a domestic warrant? You know, if this doesn't concern the heck out of every American, it sure as hell should.
Well, it should scare the heck out of every American who may have had a hand to play in that overarching conspiracy I just mentioned. But what it goes to show you, what it indicates, is that this is not simply a domestic warrant for an election or for election material. This is a far bigger investigation with much wider reaching implications. Implications for people like Mark Warner.
This is a person who has got no business interfering in elections.
Well, except for the fact that the president already tasked the director of national intelligence with ensuring that his election integrity efforts were going to be implemented. Don't forget as well that the election infrastructure is considered critical. And so the director of national intelligence would also, by that virtue, have some dominion over it, to coin a phrase.
Follow up on President Trump's obsession about the fact that he lost in 2020, that he lost the state of Georgia.
And this is what everybody who doesn't want us looking into this continues to fall back on. President Trump can't let it go. He can't stop talking about the 2020 election. Why can't he just get over it? He lost. We already know he lost. Georgia had the gold standard of elections in 2020, and that's still true today.
Still would like to see the underlying basis for the warrant in the first place, but to see her, skulking around in a baseball cap, the picture that was posted, you never thought you could make this stuff up.
Senator, it seems like
you never thought that it would happen to you, Mark. That's more like it. Like they never thought Hillary Clinton would lose in 2016. They never thought President Trump would return in 2025. And they never thought that there would be an administration that would have the balls to begin seriously looking into all of this criminality that has infected our government and the servants within it.
we're moving towards some sort of agreement on funding. What sort of...
That would be great.
If there's a CR for DHS funding, how long would you be?
I'm going to leave that to others. I mean, well, all we want is for the chaos around ICE to stop. I think we laid out a...
All right. We don't need to hear him talk about ICE. We'll talk about ICE later in the show. What's important is his reaction to Tulsi. Now, another civil servant, an elected official, Senator Adam Schiff, Watermelon Head, Pencil Neck Adam Schiff, has also got something to say about it because he, too, is just as concerned about Tulsi Gabbard's presence in Fulton County, Georgia.
So a quick take on something that's just happened today that I think you should know about. So in Georgia, in Fulton County, the FBI executed a search warrant at an election center to get election records from 2020. So you remember that this county was the center of some of the election denial efforts in 2020 when Trump...
The election fraud efforts, Adam.
Begged, pleaded, tried to coerce Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State in Georgia, to find 11,780 votes that did not exist.
I just want to find 11,780 votes.
Well, he is still trying to prove a non-existent fraud. But more than that, this is part of a pattern of the federal government under Trump trying to interfere in local conduct of elections. We're seeing it in Georgia. We're seeing it in other places as well, where they are trying to seize voter records. In Minnesota, one of the conditions articulated to the governor for essentially getting out of Minnesota was turning over their voter rolls. So this is something we need to pay attention to. This is the beginning of an effort to assault our elections.
It's absolutely not any of that. Clearly, Adam Schiff is very nervous because when the federal government gains access to all of that information, we gain access to proof of election fraud that we've never been afforded before. There have been a series of ongoing investigations into 2020 and specifically in Georgia for many years. Garland Favorito with Voter Georgia, we've spoken with him on the show. We're going to speak about him and his group's efforts in just a moment. But again, this is not simply about proving that Donald Trump won the election in 2020. We don't really need to prove that. What we need to prove is that criminal actions took place. And what I would like to point out to you is that this is not simply a loose, open-ended investigation. This is a criminal investigation that was signed by a magistrate judge in the Northern District of Georgia. This was the quickest and easiest way that they could get into there. Now, this criminal investigation is predicated under several different statutes, which we will talk about momentarily. But one thing, and this goes back to what B. Arthur was asking earlier, why didn't it leak? Can't believe it didn't leak. Well, it didn't leak because the U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Georgia is not the one handling the case. It's being handled by a U.S. Attorney out of Missouri. Missouri is where Deputy Director of the FBI, Andrew Bailey, is from, where he was the Attorney General of the state, where while he was there, he was fighting for election security, also fought the Biden administration on a number of very important fronts, also working on election security right now at the FBI, and also working with a task force down there in Florida. Now, in late 2025, there was a public filing for the intention to impanel the grand jury in the Southern District of Florida in Fort Pierce. That is the grand jury being headed up by U.S. Attorney Jason Quinones. That is the same grand jury that subpoenaed former CIA Director John Brennan. That is the grand jury that is looking into the grand conspiracy. Now, it's been widely reported that this investigation has been commenced, and it's going to be looking at roughly a 10-year time frame from the beginning of the grand conspiracy to now. The election in 2020 in Georgia, the theft of it, the criminal activity committed by the officials on the elections in Fulton County, Georgia, are part of that grand conspiracy. And these conspiracy claims are quite likely potentially related to many of these people that you see freaking out right now. Now, this application for the search warrant lays out the alleged facts that the government believes support the probable cause and has been committed by people in Georgia, and the fruits and instrumentalities of such crimes would be found at the location that was planning to be searched. The affidavit was sealed ahead of time after it was signed by the judge, so to leak it would have been an illegal act in and of itself. The fact that the U.S. Attorney for Georgia was not the one who was bringing the case made it that much more likely it would remain secret. And Kash Patel, in the last 2 weeks, just fired the FBI field office director for Georgia. So anybody who may have been loyal to the election officials in Fulton County, Georgia, had no idea that this was even going to happen in the first place. So what are they being searched under? So the affidavit and the probable cause for the affidavit was brought under Title 52, Section 20701 and 20511. Title 52 is explicitly election code for the federal government. Chapter 207 is titled Federal Election Records. Section 20701 is captioned Retention and Preservation of Records and Papers by Officers of Elections, and Chapter 205 is titled National Voter Registration. Section 20511 is captioned Criminal Penalties. So Section 20701, as that title suggests, is primarily dealing with the record-keeping statute, the violation of which is simply a misdemeanor. It basically requires the retention for 22 months of all records and papers related to the application, registration, payment of poll tax, or any other act requisite to voting. It's not a ballot retention statute because a subject matter of that second statute would be the focus for the first statute on the application and the registration of those records. Section 20501 has two main subsections, sections 1 and section 2. Subsection 1 involves intimidating, threatening, or coercing another person to register to vote, vote, or attempt to register to vote, urging or aiding any person to register to vote, or to attempt to register or vote, or exercising any right under this chapter. So the allegations of voting fraudulently in Fulton County do not seem consistent with a statute that requires intimidation, threats, or coercion. So likely subset 1 is not the focus. Subset 2 is far more intriguing, and it makes it a crime for any person, including an elected official, in a federal election to knowingly and willfully deprive, defraud, or attempt to deprive or defraud the residents of a state of a fair and impartially conducted election process by A, the procurement or submission of voter registration applications that are known by the person to be materially false, fictitious, or fraudulent under the laws of the state in which the election is held, or B, the procurement, casting, or tabulation of ballots that are known by the person to be materially false, fictitious, or fraudulent under the laws of the state in which the election is held. Now, violation of Section 20511 is a felony, and that's punishable by up to 5 years in prison. So the obligation for people in Fulton County to hold on to the records, the registration records, is only 22 months. But because of those civil lawsuits that I mentioned at the beginning of the show, after the 2020 election, Georgia was likely ordered to have all of those records on hand for all of their counties and not destroy them. Now, we know of problems similar to Fulton County, like Floyd County or Cobb County, where the same types of issues from the 2020 election arose and, of course, need to be adjudicated at this point. And keep in mind, those various lawsuits filed around the election may have been dismissed or abandoned on the basis that there was insufficient evidence of outcomes determinative of fraud. But a criminal investigation into fraudulent registrations or fraudulent casting and counting of ballots does not require there to be any potential of finding of determination of fraud. So to get the search warrant, the DOJ needed to convince a federal judge that there was some evidence of a violation of those statutes. That could be achieved with evidence that registration materials were purposely destroyed earlier than the 22-month requirement in Section 20701. And as to Section 20511, the evidence would have to show probable cause to believe that persons, which include the Fulton County elections officials, either procured or submitted materially false voter registration applications. Now, another document they released today was the items to be seized that was attached to the warrant. And in that document, they were looking at the alleged violations that took place October 12th, 2020. That's a very specific date, which strongly suggests that somebody has cooperated and given specific information to the investigators. But of course, that person has not yet been revealed, and they won't be revealed for some time. They were seizing all ballots, all absentee ballots, all provisional ballots, all election day registration ballots, and any ballot that was used to cast a vote that was counted. The warrant also allows for the seizure of all tabulator records and other electronic vote counting data, some of which, again, we know does not exist because people have tried to get it through FOIA requests, and they were told that the poll tapes don't exist. It was admitted by the lawyer for Fulton County, and the state elections board has found that it simply doesn't exist either. So there is plenty of evidence to gather through and to determine exactly what happened. Now, I want to jump back here to Patrick Byrne. This is him appearing earlier on Emerald Robinson, and it would appear that Patrick Byrne and his legal team were able to secure 5 Dominion voting system hard drives from 2020. Not the hard drives themselves, but images of the hard drives. Take a listen to this.
I've been given permission to tell you something big too, by the way, but I don't want to intercept your questions. Go ahead.
Well, look, now my next question is going to be, what do you have big to share with us, Patrick Byrne? Because honestly, you drop these bombs and I never know what you're going to have to share with us. What's today?
Well, I've been given permission to share this, and I got to do a little bit of dolphin speak. In these computers, there's something called a DLL. It's a library of, think of it like in a mechanic shop. There's one master toolbox, and there's 8 different mechanics that go over and take out the tool that they need at any given moment. Well, in these computer systems, there's all these different programs, but there's one toolbox of a set of things that they all access. And it is our opinion, and the opinion of any knowledgeable computer scientist, I don't think anyone would dispute, it turns out, that if once the machine is certified, there's any change in that toolbox, if anyone adds any new tools, the whole system loses its certification. I don't think there's anyone, even in the Dominion side of things, who would dispute that. I've been given permission to reveal to you that we've actually secretly obtained 5 hard drive images from 2020. The bad guys don't know which 5, but we can tell you in each one of them we have found an average of 500 changes to the DLLs after certification, and as many as 1,000.
So that's pretty damning. And that is a different investigation that needs to take place. But I would imagine that will be coming next. Now, this is not, again, an open-ended investigation that they don't know where they're going. This is the opening salvo, and they're not going to tell us what direction they're going to go next. Now, I wanted to pull up this article about the raid yesterday from my good friend Brian Lupo, which, of course, has pictures of the warrant itself. Now, again, this was signed by a magistrate judge in Atlanta on Wednesday at 2:31 p.m. The next morning, they went in. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so initially they went in the morning with one warrant, and they had to come back because there was something unsatisfactory in that warrant. And then the revised warrant was signed at 2:31 p.m. And they went back in, and this is when they finally were able to really start searching. So we are looking at some type of fraud that took place, likely with regard to the handling of ballots, to the registration, to the actual votes that took place. There are some people still in Fulton County who were there in 2020. There are some people who have cycled out, but none of them are going to be blameless in what we saw. Now, this attachment and the affidavit outlines materials and items to be seized, including all of those ballots we talked about, everything from the initial count on November 3rd, and also from the recount, which occurred sometime later. But it also wants all of the voter rolls. Now, considering that the DOJ has on numerous occasions requested from Fulton County and all of the states their active voter rolls so that we can determine if there are illegals, ghost voters, dead voters, etc., it's highly likely that they're going to be used for some of those investigations as well. Now, in those ballot images, some of those items might be difficult to produce, considering there were sworn declarations submitted in the federal case of Curling versus Raffensperger and responses given to open records requests submitted by citizen journalists beginning immediately after the 2020 election. There was a Dr. Philip Stark, a UC Berkeley professor. He submitted a sworn affidavit and stated there were 376,863 missing ballot images from the original count in Fulton County, which, according to Dr. Stark, makes it impossible to audit the 2020 election. That is a crime right there. That's a problem. Hopefully that will be addressed as well. In Georgia, remember, the original machine count conducted on November 3rd, 2020, was not the certified count. The ensuing machine count reported on December 3rd, 2020, was used to actually certify the vote. And Stark stated that 17,852 votes were missing ballot images from the certified count in his declaration. Those 17,852 missing ballot images were also corroborated by the report we discussed yesterday, the SEB complaint 2023-025, which is what Marjorie Taylor Greene used to call for that formal investigation into Fulton County back in September of last year. Continuing, each ballot image created by the Dominion tabulator creates something called an SHA hash file. It's a hash validation code that can then be used to authenticate the ballot images are the original and unedited images. So the paper that goes into the machine is scanned, is then hashed, and then that can be used to verify whether or not it's real later. But of the 148,318 ballot images that were created from mail-in ballots in Fulton County, there were only 16,034 SHA files that were retained. That is also a crime. Now, the physical ballots, those paper ballots, it's been a mythical creature in Georgia, especially in Fulton County, ever since the election in 2020. Garland Favorito's Voter Georgia filed that lawsuit very shortly after the 2020 election, and the case was abruptly dismissed on procedural grounds, specifically claiming the plaintiffs did not have standing. Well, standing doesn't matter now, because as I said, this is a criminal investigation. The FBI was able to prove to that magistrate judge, and the DOJ were able to prove to that magistrate judge that there was probable cause to step in and seize all of these materials, everything in that search warrant, so that they could investigate and determine whether or not there was a crime. Following a decision in December of 2022 from the Georgia Supreme Court, this granted plaintiffs standing and remanded it back down to the lower courts. But that case has been sitting in limbo for over 1,100 days, waiting to be assigned to a judge. There have been numerous occasions where it was assigned to a judge and then it was just dropped and then it went back into limbo. And the Georgia State Election Board themselves have also submitted several subpoenas seeking to obtain those physical ballots so they can investigate. And it wasn't until a decision last month from Judge Robert McBurney seeking those records in the subpoena, they were ordered to be turned over to the board. However, physical ballots were notably absent from the order. Now, Gateway Pundit also reported back in May of 2021, the warehouse that was storing those physical paper ballots under the guard of the Fulton County Sheriff's Office was left wide open for 2 hours. 20 minutes after the sheriff's 2 patrol cars left the parking lot, the alarm at the facility went off, giving an opportunity for somebody to come in and steal those very particular ballots. Then we've got the tabulator tapes, another crime. It was also reported that missing tabulator tapes were not present throughout Fulton County. Those Dominion voting tabulators and the scanners create several pull tapes throughout the voting process. The first tape produced is called the zero tape. It's used to ensure that there are no ballots currently stored on the system's memory prior to the election event itself beginning. Of those 148 tabulators that were used for advanced voting, there were only 9 zero tapes that were produced. That right there is a problem, an uncertifiable election. The Deputy County Attorney Steve Rosenberg claimed the zero tapes were old-style receipts and had become almost completely faded due to a number of open records requests for them. He also claimed the Secretary of State's office maintained the originals, but it's actually required to be held by the Superior Court, not by the Secretary of State. Those so-called completely faded claims fell short on 2 fronts. First, if the tapes faded because of being handled to fulfill other requests, the files and images shared in the requests that were fulfilled could have simply then been forwarded on to future requests, and there would have been no additional expenditure. And second, if the Secretary of State or the Superior Court had those original zero tapes, Fulton County likely maintained a photocopy or a digital copy for their own records. In addition to those zero tapes, none of the closing tapes produced had the required signature from the poll managers and 2 witnesses, another crime. This accounted for over 315,000 ballots in Fulton County, with a crucial link missing in that chain of custody, again making everything uncertifiable. Further, the closing tapes that were provided, also unsigned, were created on only 16 tabulators that were not deployed for advanced voting, and they were done at the English Street warehouse, a completely different location. That warehouse at the time was filled with Dominion employees that were contracted to conduct the logic and accuracy testing following a COVID-19 outbreak in the warehouse in mid-October of 2020 and were retained for the remainder of the election and beyond. Now, this FBI search that was conducted and on Wednesday and then late into the evening was to transport over 700 boxes of materials. It wasn't taken to D.C., it was taken to Northern Virginia. Notably, the State Election Board Vice Chair Dr. Jan Johnson and Sally Grubbs, who is the newest member of the board, were both forbidden access to the warehouse during the execution of the warrant as impartial observers. No one was allowed in, and that includes not only the state election board, but also any of the Georgia Fulton County commissioners, anybody for the Fulton County Records Administration, anybody who may have otherwise been allowed into that warehouse was forbidden from entering. The only people who were allowed in were the FBI and the DOJ officials who were doing the investigation. Now, I want to show you the reactions from some of those local officials on the ground because they are absolutely freaking out, and they're a little bit more nervous than Mark Warner or Watermelon Head Adam Schiff were. This is Georgia Commissioner Dana Barrett. And this is in the midst of the raid. She's confronted not only about the raid itself, but also about much of the shenanigans going on with regard to voter registration. Now, questioning her right here is David Cate. David Cate played a video from him recently. He and his partner went out to a former homeless shelter that has not been operational for years, but currently maintains thousands of active voter registrations. David Cate attempted to ask her about these voter registrations because I guess she is running for Secretary of State, and she got very nervous. Take a listen.
What you're doing is extremely dangerous.
Why is it dangerous?
Because you're spreading conspiracy theories.
It's not a conspiracy theory. Do you have $45? I'm not undermining. I'm not saying people are voting there. Ma'am, I'm not saying that people are voting there. I'm not saying people are voting there. I'm saying people are currently registered to vote there. We went around Fulton County the last few weeks and we see that people are currently registered to vote in places like empty lots, homeless shelters that closed 10 years ago. What would you do if you become Secretary of State to address that?
I'm not going to reply to conspiracy theories.
It's not conspiracy. It's a current. You can currently go on the voter rolls, purchase them for $45, and go there with us. We will gladly take you if you want to go to.
I appreciate what you're saying. I'm not going to respond to conspiracy theories.
How is that a conspiracy theory? It's an active voter rolls.
Active voter rolls from the state of Georgia, Georgia's own records administration, maintaining that data, proving that there are thousands of people registered to vote all over the state of Georgia in places where they cannot physically be living. These are ghost voters. These people may not exist. They may be illegal aliens. They may be homeless people. They may be individuals who have left the state of Georgia and they've moved on and they are registered and they are voting other places. It's an honest question. There is nothing wrong with asking this question, and there is no reason not to ensure that the voter rolls in Georgia are clean. This right here is the very reason why those voter rolls have not yet been handed over to the Department of Justice and Harmeet Dillon at the Civil Rights Division. But, of course, now at least we have the voter rolls for Fulton County, Georgia. Now, this action by the FBI and the DOJ proves that they're not effing around and that they will go to any lengths to get the information that they have up until this point requested very, very nicely. Not asking nicely anymore.
If you're going to be running for Secretary of State, you're in charge of maintaining the voter rolls. Don't you care about if people are registered to vote from empty lots?
Thank you for your questions. I appreciate it. I've got to get
Do you think it's a conspiracy theory that people are registered to vote from empty lots, though? Well, I have the ability to go wherever I want to. People are currently registered to vote in empty lots, Commissioner, and if you're going to run for Secretary of State, aren't you going to at least take a look at that? It took me $45 to purchase the voter rolls. You can do that as well for the Fulton County. You can see that people are registered to vote from empty lots. They're registered to vote at a MARTA bus station. Are you not going to do anything about that? You're just going to call that conspiracy theories again? We have exact addresses that you can go to right now. 205 Elm Street Northwest. It's an empty lot. You can go there right now and see it for yourself. Do you not care about that? You're an elected official and you don't want to address that? Commissioner, if you're going to be running for Secretary of State and that involves maintaining clean voter rolls in one of the most important counties, I would say, in the United States.
I think what you're doing is extremely dangerous.
Why is it dangerous?
Because you're spreading conspiracy theories.
It's not a conspiracy theory. Do you have $45? I'm not undermining. I'm not saying people are voting there. Ma'am, I'm not saying that people are voting there. I'm not saying people are voting there. I'm saying people are currently registered to vote there. Jason, right? People are currently registered to vote there. We're not saying people are voting there, Commissioner. We're saying clean the rolls.
Clean the rolls. That is all we're saying. She is running scared. She is not willing to answer a question that rightfully would fall under her purview if she became the Secretary of State. Now, before we continue, I have a very brief message from our friends over here on Rumble. Thank you very much to Badlands Media for the raid as well. Parents, real talk here for just a second. America is about to hit a huge milestone. We're coming up on America's 250th birthday, 250 years of freedom, grit, sacrifice, and the greatest experiment in self-governance the world has ever seen. This is the perfect moment to help your kids understand why this country matters. Not just the fireworks and the hot dogs, but the story behind it all. And there's a free guide called The Kid's Guide to America's 250th Birthday. And it's honestly a great way to introduce kids to how America began, who the founding fathers were, what they risked, and why the ideas they fought for still matter today. This guide sends kids back to the moment when brave men signed the Declaration of Independence, knowing full well they were risking their lives and for their freedom. It breaks it all down in a way that kids can actually understand and enjoy without watering it down or turning it into just simply boring schoolwork. So if you care about raising your kids or your grandkids so that they know where this country came from and why it's worth preserving, this is something that you're going to want to grab. And the best part, it's completely free with this special offer. All you do is pay $2 for shipping and handling. So just head to free250guide.com. Once again, that's free250guide.com, or you can use that QR code on screen and get the Kid's Guide to America's 250th birthday for your kids today. America's story matters. Make sure the next generation knows it. Thank you very much to Rumble. Appreciate you guys. All right, now continuing with our dig on Fulton County here. We also have another Fulton County elections official right here who is very uncomfortable about what happened yesterday. She is speaking with, I believe, a series of mainstream media outlets in this clip.
They are in there collecting 700 boxes of ballots right now. We are obviously concerned about once the ballots leave here, what will happen to the ballots, and our lawyers are going to be working on that. They are working on that as we speak right now. Let me just speak to the larger issue about what this is really all about. This is a scare tactic. This is something that we have seen done before. This is to instill fear and chaos, something that our officials at the national level are doing on a daily basis. And this is not a surprise for us here in Fulton County. This is meant to make people afraid to go to the polls because midterm elections are going to be so crucial to course correcting what is going on in our country. So instead of taking care of people who are dying in the streets of Minnesota, they are here in Fulton County trying to get ballots from 2020 that have been in storage for now 6 years from when it was found that there was no problems with the 2020 election.
She's absolutely panicked because she knows as soon as those ballots are investigated by a competent team, every single thing she said is going to be found to be completely wrong. Now, this is also her, again, inside, basically with no control over what's going on, saying the exact same thing, that once the ballots leave the building, they can't secure them. They can't tell you whether or not the ballots are the same as when they left. Here, we have another statement from last night. This is Fulton County Chairman Rob Pitts, also essentially touting the record of Fulton County and, again, trying to drum up some fear that this is about intimidation. If the FBI gets their hands on these ballots, we can't promise you that they are secure any longer. But, again, it is a complete lie.
Now they have been removed from this facility. Out of our control. We don't know. They're being taken. We don't know what's going to happen to them. So we can no longer, and I can no longer, as chair of this board, satisfy not only the citizens of Atlanta, but the citizens of the world that those ballots are still secure. So that is a major concern that I have right now. Again, the point is, once they were here, as long as they were here in the control of Fulton County, I was confident that they were safe and secure. And the other point I'd like to make, this goes back to the 2020 elections. For the life of me, I still cannot understand the fascination about the 2020 elections, which occurred 6 years ago. That election is over with. That election has been reviewed, it's been audited, and in every case, every instance, we get a clean bill of health.
You know, what he's saying there, it's a bit like asking a rapist to do the investigation on the rape that they committed. Let me just assure you that if you give an individual or an organization the authority to investigate themselves for something that they themselves allegedly did, it's always going to come out that there was no problems. It's always going to come out that there was no crime that was committed. And that's why it's so important that we have an impartial investigation, which we've never gotten. We've never had the ability. We've always been told that we didn't have the standing, that we couldn't look, that we shouldn't look, that it was dangerous to look. They're still clinging to the same tired old narratives, and they've lost control. They no longer have control of these ballots. They no longer have control of the narrative, and that's why they're so freaked out.
So anybody who knows what happened in 2020 on that night at State Farm Arena, it was Fulton County Commission Chairman Rob Pitts. I was there. So the fascination with this, I still don't understand it, but we'll have more to say later.
Well, he just said it himself. He was there. He was one of those people who participated in what is now being investigated as illegal actions, as a criminal investigation by the FBI. So yes, he's very nervous.
I just want to say that Fulton County Department of Registration and Elections is always and will continue to maintain fair, transparent, and accurate elections.
It's absolutely not true. One of the reasons that it's so vital that we take a look at the voter rolls and the registrations and, of course, all the ballots and the lack of chain of custody documentation, which we already know doesn't exist. Many different crimes will be provable from what we're looking into.
And we will continue to do the work of the electorate here in Fulton County. The FBI is still in the building. We have fully complied. We will always comply with law enforcement and with the rule of law. And that's what we do here in Fulton County. And that's all I have to say.
Mr. Paine.
Well, cannot wait to see where this goes, because it's obviously a wide-reaching investigation. Now, here is Mr. Pitts again speaking this morning, and they don't really know what the hell is going on, all right? They haven't been told anything other than what's in the warrant, other than what's in the probable cause affidavit. Nobody is telling them anything. Nobody is giving them any information. Mr. Pitts is very, very concerned.
Me too. We're ready.
Oh, Richard. Oh, yeah. Two. Oh, sorry. Richard, just shot it out.
Two quick questions. Have you seen an unsealed? Have you seen yet an unsealed?
Oh, I apologize. I guess this is from early in the day on Wednesday, so he's not going to say anything different than what we've already established. All right, now, Julie Adams is on the Fulton County Board of Registrations and Elections. She wrote this statement as the FBI was searching. The DOJ wrote to Fulton County in August of last year, asking for the ballots. The DOJ wrote another letter in October, asking again for the 2020 ballots and other records. 2 weeks ago, the FBI delivered a third letter, but the majority of the Fulton County Board of Elections literally denied these requests. The Georgia State Election Board has been trying for 4 years to get these exact same records, including issuing a subpoena for the ballots and other records, and all of those efforts have failed until today. So just keeping that in mind, remember what that woman just said a moment ago, that they always cooperate with the rule of law. Well, everything that could have been done short of a subpoena, short of a search warrant, was done, and every single time they refused to comply with the rule of law. So here we are. It's a situation of their own making. I applaud the Attorney General Pam Bondi and FBI Director Kash Patel for finally searching for and retrieving the records from the 2020 election that the U.S. Attorney General, under federal law, is entitled to receive and review. It is my hope that the FBI is in the process of getting every box of 2020 election materials in that warehouse to be able to piece together once and for all the truth about 2020. I am dedicated to making sure, to the best of my ability, that elections in Fulton County are accurate. That is exactly what's happening. Let's hope this starts a new chapter in Fulton County for transparency and accountability. Now, these 2020 election records, again, 700 boxes. The tabulator tapes, which, of course, do not exist. The numbered voter lists, which are going to show that there are not real people registered to vote. The proof that the ballot boxes were supposedly produced thousands of votes was real. This is Julie speaking on the War Room earlier today.
I take it you assume that all of this information is going to be readily available, and if it's not, that's going to be an issue?
Steve, the best I know is that the documents are contained in about 700 boxes that have been held in the clerk of the courts area in this warehouse, and my understanding is they're completely unorganized and not inventoried well. We don't know where the documents are in those 700 boxes, and I have advised people over the last several months that we have no other choice but to recommend that all 700 boxes be removed.
Now, because the state elections board has already attempted to complete their own investigation, they've already received a subpoena to receive these documents and they have been rejected, it would be wonderful for the federal government in the course of their investigation to allow the state elections board to have their own look so that their separate and ongoing investigation can be fully completed. I see no reason why the FBI and the DOJ would not allow that to happen, considering that there's already been a fair amount of investigating that's being done by the state elections board. They could bring that evidence in to help the FBI and the DOJ in their own investigation. They could provide important context to things, especially given the disorganized nature of all of these records.
Taken out of the hands of Fulton County so that we can look for the documents that we've been looking for years, and have been unable to get Fulton County to provide or produce or even try to find. So we're looking for those tabulator tapes. We're looking for numbered voter list. We would like to know who is eligible to vote for the 2020 election. We're looking for documents to prove that the ballot boxes that they claimed produced thousands of votes were actually real ballot boxes. And the whole purpose of this is to look for areas of inconsistency and irregularities, so to understand what happened if it did happen, so it will not happen in future elections. That's
obviously that's the dream, right? We got to make sure that this doesn't happen again, but it's happening all over the place. Now, just to underscore some of what we already know, here's a couple of clips with Garland Favorito describing what Voter Georgia already determined when looking at information they were given access to. In Fulton County, they falsified 7 audit tally sheets that did not match corresponding ballot images, giving a 100% benefit to Joe Biden. Take a listen.
Yeah, so what we're looking at, Heather and Steve, are tally sheets that were the auditors for the Georgia audit that was conducted on November 14th and 15th in Fulton County. They filled these out as they counted the ballots. And typically you would see 37 to 43, 61 to 48, something like that. But here we have tally sheets 100 to nothing for ballots. So somebody filled this out. But it's not just one of these. We have 7 of these, and we're going to kind of scroll through and show you these live. There's another one, 100 to nothing. The actual counts of these are like 59-42 in terms of ballot images.
So these tally sheets do not match the actual ballot stacks that were fed into the scanners. But at the end, they just write 100 ballots for Biden and then 100 ballots count for Biden. These people never signed these things. However, a person, a physical, real live body filled them out. In doing so, they committed crimes. they committed election crimes, which could be charged under the very statutes that the FBI is currently investigating. Now, remember what I said earlier about likely someone turning state's evidence and giving information to the federal government. I would like to remind you about Ruby Freeman, because the case of Ruby Freeman is highly consequential to what we saw happening on election night in Georgia back in 2020. Ruby Freeman initially was willing and interested to work with the Trump administration to prove what she experienced on that night and how the events of that night led to the results that we saw. Now, here, this is a recording that you probably heard. I played it years ago. This is Ruby on a police body cam describing what she saw she and her daughter did on that night. But it's even more consequential because if it wasn't for the fact that somebody got to Ruby on the deep state side and controlled her, then Rudy Giuliani would still have his law license. There wouldn't have been that multi-million-dollar civil judgment against him. Going even further than that, the Fannie Willis Fulton County RICO investigation and charges against President Trump and all of his people, that never would have happened either. There have been so many consequences from a lack of an investigation into the 2020 election, and this is one of them right here. So I'm actually going to turn the volume down and I will read the transcript on screen because it's kind of difficult to hear. But Ruby Freeman says, and he said, and they were saying the count was low. The count was really low. And are all of these ballots counted? And so the guy asked me, was like, there are no more ballots? We can get those in the morning because there wasn't that many. They said, well, count as many as you can. Count all of them, you know. So my daughter said, Mama, get on the scanner. I said, you want me to do what? Because Ruby Freeman was not trained to scan these ballots. These are the suitcase ballots right here that Ruby Freeman is describing being told to get out and scan. This is the same night. Internet is glitchy and going in and out. Well, that sucks. Yeah, nothing I can do about it. Hopefully it'll look good on the replay. But this is the same night that they said that there was a pipe that was burst. But Ruby Freeman and her daughter stuck around and continued to scan ballots. Continuing with Ruby's testimony here. Because I didn't scan. She said, we need to do this so we could get up out of here. So there wasn't even nobody else because there were no more work to do to be done except to scan. Inaudible. So they was just gone in the bucket. So they said that, boom, under the table, cut the zip ties off the suitcase to scan them. So the number would go up, and that's how the number was created, meaning the vote tally for Joe Biden by the ballots going through the scanner. So when all of them were done, we got the final count, and we put them back in the bucket and zip tied them and put them back under the table. So that's the reason the ballots came out from under the table and we reopened them up. Isn't that interesting? It is serious. It is deep. It is so real. It is so they will believe it because I'm good at explaining myself if I'm right. That's why I'm not leaving. I'm not that knowledgeable. Because the last one I did was a church for Mr. Trump. I was in, it was not Trump, President Obama. It was nothing like now. We are talking about years later, 12 years later. So it was nothing like that. It was small. We were in a little office in a government center. So this was major. Describing the differences between when she worked as a tallier back in the Obama years and then working now for Joe Biden, essentially. So the way you did things, now even the scanning and the cutting and everything was totally different. And I didn't work in that mess in that big place. So it was nothing like that. So everything I learned in this one, right there, I learned right now. I didn't know any of this before I started. I didn't start until it was on the job training. Yes, we started in August. This on for the runoff was an office inaudible. And the reason I was so excited about it, another thing, is that when we were done at Howard's, there was nothing going on. And he would count them up, and we would put them in by precincts. And then when by precincts, you'd get so many, and you'd do bundles of 100. So we was doing that. But then they needed, quote, unquote, some good people at State Farm. State Farm is where they brought in people that they knew they could, quote, trust when the pipes were supposed to be burst and the counting was not supposed to be continuing. But of course, they did. And they still got up to me because when I got to State Farm and I saw the red boxes, and I'm like, oh my God, Helen, the boxes and the ballots. And now I'm having to take the ballots out. So I'm having to go through the whole process. But when they came in the mail, right to sticking to State Farm, into precincts by, hundreds. So yeah, I was excited about the whole thing. But the USB ports, but really, I would love to go live with that because the ballots is history. Even though my name is still lingering and people are going to believe what they want to believe, but now it's the USB ports. So I need an attorney. I want to go live. I'll go live on every platform because it will blow your mind. And you are going to be amazed at that picture. Came to your mind, inaudible. And when you thought about me, you are going to be amazed. Miss Ruby, what will I be amazed by? Harrison Floyd is asking this. I can't tell you. I want an attorney, and I want to go live, and I need an attorney, and I can tell you then. Keep in mind, Harrison Floyd was charged as part of that group of Trump supporters in the RICO case. Likely because of his involvement with this case and attempting to bring the truth forward. Now, if I had to guess, Ruby Freeman attempting to bring information forward about USB drives, that probably has something to do with pre-scanned ballots that were brought in and then loaded into the system. Now, I promised you the reaction of other politicians from out of state. And one of those politicians who is looking at Fulton County, Georgia yesterday and thinking about what it could mean for them and their state is George Soros's favorite stepdaughter, Jenna Griswold, the Secretary of State for the state of Colorado, which incidentally was also the home base here in America of Dominion Voting Systems. Working within the state government of Colorado are many people who used to be employed at Dominion. Working at the now former Dominion were people who used to be employed by the state of Colorado. Jenna Griswold knows that if the federal government is willing to bring out the FBI and seize ballots, voter rolls, and more in Fulton County, Georgia, it is merely a snap of the fingers before they do the same thing in Colorado. Now I need to say thank you so much to Ready For It Bet, for the donation on Rumble Wallet of the Tether Gold. That's the first time I've ever gotten a Tether Gold donation. Thank you so much, my friend. Also, Sherry K47. So if these jackwagons say they can't confirm the ballots are secure in the hands of the FBI, is then an admission of the FBI doing nefarious things with classified documents taken from Mar-a-Lago? No, not necessarily. It's a different FBI now. What it is an attempt to sully in the minds of the people of either Fulton County or America that once the ballots are taken out of the chain of custody of Fulton County, they can't be trusted. But once the ballots are taken from Fulton County, they would be handled in such a way that the chain of custody would be documented. The thing about it is that the chain of custody was already foobarred by Fulton County officials. And that's going to be one of the things that will easily be proven because those poll tapes that I mentioned earlier, those simply don't exist. Also, the ballots being left open at that warehouse with nobody to guard them, that also is a problem for chain of custody. So it's a hollow argument coming from the Fulton County officials. In general, I think that it's just their attempt to obfuscate the trustworthiness of the FBI. They're attempting to sow this image that the FBI's investigation can't be trusted, because of course what they're going to find is that all of the two statutes under which they are seeking the search warrant, those are going to be easily proven, but there's going to be a lot more crimes that they're going to find through the course of their investigation. Take a look at Jenna Griswold and how nervous she looks.
Colorado Secretary of State and Chair of the Democratic Association of Secretaries of State, Jenna Griswold. Really good to have you.
Thanks for having me on.
Just first off, this is something I was curious about earlier. States run their own elections. What is the FBI doing in a state elections office?
Well, I think this is unprecedented. I know as much information as you know, as Americans know right now. But if this does turn out to be just one more part of Trump's retribution and attempts to rewrite 2020, I think that's deeply disturbing to the entire country.
Jenna Griswold is clearly eating her anxiety right now. Just take a look at her. She's looking real puffy.
There is just kind of like an unknown amount of people don't know quite how concerned they should be about 2026 and 2028, but 2026 is coming up first. And what the administration might do. If Donald Trump is going back and trying to say, I won in...
Worship Dancer in the Rumble chat says, hello all, I need prayer for help saving my home. A prayer of help is appreciated. God, everybody in the chat, please pray for Worship Dancer that he or she, I don't know if it's a man or a woman, is able to get this sorted out. God, please look out for them. Do whatever you can. Send whatever assistance you can. Please do not let their house be taken from them or anything else bad to happen. Surround them in a healing robe of light and ensure their safety and security, and keep them in your prayers, you guys.
2020, and I need to rewrite history, even though he did not. If he's willing to do that, there are real questions about what he's willing to do if he loses the House or the Senate or both in 2026. What are you preparing for?
We're preparing for everything. But I'll tell you, we were preparing for everything in 2020 also. So all types of contingencies. We actually just went to our legislature this week to ask for more resources. And we've been working with both our attorney general and the governor on all types of contingencies. I will say Trump has made our elections less safe since taking office the second time. He's disbanded the FBI and DHS's work on securing our elections from foreign adversaries. He's fired all the people, for the most part, we used to work with in the federal government on security. And he's
the CISA folks.
What they've done is they've hired new people who are not deep state. The people that they used to work with in Colorado were the people who were assisting to make sure that their scam would be able to continue unabated. Now, of course, we've got new people coming in. It's a new administration. This happens every single time. Simply because somebody has had a job with the federal government does not entitle them to continue working there, despite a different presidential administration being brought in. Elections are not less secure. They are arguably far more secure. And when the SAVE Act ultimately gets passed through the Senate, as it's already made its way through the House, elections will be more secure than they've ever been in modern history. Also, once the DOJ finally gets their hands on the voter rolls and they're able to clean up all of those dead ghost voters, illegal voters, they'll be even more secure.
So, folks, exactly. They would provide great services to secretaries of state and to the counties. In Colorado, we're trying to pick up as many of the services as possible. But we've seen Trump weaponize the DOJ to go after political opponents.
Oh, weaponizing the DOJ. Do you mean like the state of Colorado weaponized their legal system against Tina Peters? This is another thing, another aspect of this that has Jenna Griswold and the state government of Colorado very nervous, because of the way they conducted that witch hunt against Tina Peters. Tina Peters is likely going to be set free either by having her case completely thrown out or by having it declared a mistrial. They may not even try her again, given everything that was revealed during the course of that hearing recently. Tina Peters, of course, could also likely be used as a witness by the federal government in their investigation against Colorado. This is not going to stop at Georgia. Georgia, again, is merely the opening salvo.
We'll see if that's what's happening right now in Fulton County. And just like you, I don't know what's going to happen in 2026, but we will be prepared.
If he comes to try to seize voting machines, and I don't know if he would go to Colorado, because Colorado hasn't been a state in the past that has voted for him. It's not like Georgia, which he thinks he should have won, or Arizona. But if he does try to go seize voting machines, what would you do? What can a Secretary of State do?
Well, if there is a court order for the seizure of voting machines in a criminal investigation, Jenna Griswold would have precious little that she would be able to do. There would be nothing, absolutely nothing.
Well, there's, not to get into all of our contingencies, but Donald Trump, by the way, has said in the past that
she also lose a tooth? That's new.
He's lost Colorado and other states that use mail ballots because of mail ballots.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, and he's been running a retribution campaign against Colorado now for almost a year, because we have Tina Peters in prison.
Also a good point.
Yeah, so we don't know what's going to happen. But one of the first things we would do is file a lawsuit to stop them. And even if they seize voting equipment, we have the ballots. They're on paper ballots. So I don't think it will come to that. I hope it will not come to that. We will be ready. But there's no way that Trump is going to be able to seize voting equipment and change the outcome. That's just not how any of this.
Well, it's not about changing the outcome. It is, however, about proving that criminal actions were committed by people in a position of public trust. Jenna Griswold is very, very nervous, and I have to say I love seeing it. Now, just again, here is that proof of the Missouri U.S. attorney who signed that the request for the search warrant. The U.S. attorney, not being the U.S. attorney for the Northern District of Georgia, ensured that there would not be a leak. Now, also, I believe that this entire investigation will again be brought into the grand jury investigation down in the Southern District of Florida. But the task force that is operating out of the Southern District of Florida is using U.S. attorneys from all over the country, likely every single state where we know that election fraud took place in 2020. And these will be the ones who will be adjudicating and prosecuting the case against those various individuals who were involved in that fraudulent activity. B1876, Jenna won't eat that well in prison. I know it's a lot of carbs in prison. So, you know, she might eat rather well, but just not particularly healthy. All right. Now, back in Fulton County, Georgia, we had 4,000 or more ballot images that also had impossible duplicate timestamps. That's not something that can happen in reality, because each ballot goes through the scanner at a particular time. It is down to the milliseconds. Now, in these 4,000 ballot images, they were all scanned at virtually the same time, or they were scanned in batches at the same time, which means that they likely weren't scanned at all. They were uploaded. In this particular instance, you've got, I believe, up to 8 ballots scanned on November 5th, 2 days after the election, at 11:19:40. It is simply not possible to have all of those ballots being scanned at the exact same hour, minute, time, and millisecond. It cannot physically be done. It's, again, a blatant indication of fraud taking place.
The next one is that ballot images, and over 4,000 of them, have impossible duplicate timestamps. Now, a scanner, as y'all know, probably know if you've been hanging around with us, that it has only one, about one ballot can be scanned per second. Well, we've got 4,000 that have exactly identical timestamps, and if you can, I don't know if you can see that, but we'll be able to get you the slides. You can see that they all have 11:19:40 on November the 5th. They all have the exact same timestamp. So that is not possible. 3 to 8 ballots were scanned in 1 second. It's not possible. So it appears that these may have been inserted, But the bottom line is we can't authenticate all these duplicate ballots, these 4,000 duplicate ballots. Yes, Ron. Ron, you want to add something?
In addition to that, they have thousands of ballots which also have duplicate file names. That is also not something that is possible. All right, real quick before we continue, another brief message from our friends over here at Rumble. My guys, if you still have not yet tried 1775 coffee, you still have an opportunity. They got some of those starter kits available. In those starter kits, you're going to get their bold dark roast, their smooth medium roast, their vitality and mushroom coffee. And, of course, that mushroom coffee is going to give you laser focus with no crash. It is all made from the highest quality beans that you can possibly get. Single origin, small batch, toxin, and mold-free. Plus, you're also going to get their gold spoon clip, their very strong frother, and you're also going to get their black 1775 tumbler. It's $170 worth of coffee and gear, and it's all yours for just $99. This is for every single one of you out there who have been watching 1775 blow up on Rumble and wonder if it's actually worth it. It truly is. So go to 1775coffee.com/studio and grab one of those starter kits before they're gone. You're going to get a batch of bold beans, clean fuel, and a morning routine that stands for something just like Rumble does. You can also use that QR code that you see on screen, the link that you find below, or the link that is in the chat. Thank you very much to Rumble and 1775 Coffee. All right, now, getting back to Fulton County. All right, so President Trump shared this yesterday, which is a stunning admission of the existence of Hammer and Scorecard and the story that Maria Zak told about Italy's part that they played in the stolen 2020 election. If you did not see the interview that I did with Maria Zak years ago at Mike Lindell's Moment of Truth Symposium, I would highly recommend going back and watching it. Maria is high energy, and she's also a person who has a lot to say, and I felt like I did a really good job keeping her on track and really laying out everything that she knew about Italy's participation. Now, there was also another interview that I did years ago with an Italian whistleblower who also worked with regards to Leonardo. That was the spy satellite company that was involved in the transfer of this electronic information from Italy back into these Dominion machines. I can't remember his name at the moment, but that is still on YouTube. I should probably find that and bring it back over to Rumble now. Maybe I'll see if I can do that this weekend. But President Trump shared this post from the Skiff. Maria Zak testified about the stolen 2020 election operation connected to Obama when he diverted $400 million from the infamous pallets of cash sent to Iran, funneling through the Dubai embassy to operatives in Italy and Merrill Lynch in Geneva, Switzerland. In return, Italian officials at Leonardo SPA used military satellites to help hack U.S. voting machines, flipping votes from Trump to Biden using CIA-developed tools like Hammer and Scorecard, along with numerous other methods for fraud and manipulation. China reportedly coordinated the whole operation, providing the tech backbone and bribes to corrupt Americans. The CIA oversaw it. The FBI covered it up, all to install Biden as a puppet. This is the global election fraud cartel and the real threat against American democracy and the rest of the world. This is a story that a lot of people have talked about. Of course, it's never really come to fruition. People have dismissed it as conspiracy, as fantasy. But the fact that President Trump is sharing it right now at the exact same time that we just got Maduro bringing in the Smartmatic information from Venezuela, of course, which ties in the CIA. And now he's talking about this global deep state, Hammer and Scorecard, Obama, the whole shebang. My guys, this is huge right here. So anyways, I am very excited seeing where all of this is going. Yes, Arturio was one of the people who was involved with Leonardo, but the guy that I interviewed, hold on, let me actually, let me see if I can go back. Wonder if I can go to my Search across your channel. If I can, Italian, did I put that? No. It would have been one of my interviews. I'll have to find it, you guys. I'll have to find it. But it's a really good one. You know what? I did. Neon Revolt was there with me because it was Neon that had to do the interpretation because this guy did. Giulio Occhianero. Giulio Occhianero was his name. That's it. Yeah, so Giulio didn't speak English. I had to present him questions ahead of time, and then translate them. And then he responded in Italian, and then I had to translate it to English, and then Neon read the answers in English. I will download this, and I will put it on my Rumble channel and every other platform this weekend, okay? All right, now, considering that President Trump just shared that information about Hammer and Scorecard and Obama, I want to bring it back one more time to Tulsi Gabbard and her presentation at the White House. This is, again, about a year ago. I believe this was just before. No. This is after. This is after she already presented the election insecurity report at the cabinet meeting from the DNI. But it ties in once again to the grand conspiracy that is currently being investigated in the Southern District of Florida, in the same building likely where the task force is looking into election integrity.
Thank you. And Director Gabbard, this one is for you. Do you believe that any of this new indicates former President Obama in criminal behavior?
We have referred and will continue to refer all of these documents to the Department of Justice and the FBI to investigate the criminal implications of this.
For even former President Obama?
Correct. The evidence that we have found and that we have released directly point to President Obama leading the manufacturing of this intelligence assessment. There are multiple pieces of evidence and intelligence that confirm that fact.
Ed, go ahead.
Director Gabbard, thank you. So just two questions, but to begin on that. The president yesterday, you've inferred that the former president helped lead a coup. Based on what you now see, do you believe President Obama is guilty of treason?
I'm leaving the criminal charges to the Department of Justice. I'm not an attorney, but as I've said previously, when you look at the intent behind creating a fake manufactured intelligence document that directly contradicts multiple assessments that were created by the intelligence community, the expressed intent and what followed afterward can only be described as a years-long coup and a treasonous conspiracy against the American people, our republic, and an attempt to undermine President Trump's administration.
Now, this is your reminder that Barack Hussein Obama has already, long ago, been referred to the Department of Justice criminally by DNI Gabbard for the part that he played in the grand conspiracy. The grand conspiracy, which includes the 2020 election and the information that has currently been seized and is being investigated by the FBI and the DOJ. Have to refresh on this one.
We look at where we are now. Over the last several weeks, we've declassified and released documents that exposed how President Obama and leaders in the intelligence community knowingly manufactured a false intelligence document after the 2016 election was done, after the American people said, no, we want Donald Trump to go and be our commander-in-chief, not Hillary Clinton. And this manufactured document alleged that Russia aspired to help President Trump win the election with the aim of undermining his presidency and usurping the will and the voices of the American people who sent Trump to the White House.
Now, the way that Tulsi Gabbard describes the action of Barack Obama actually ties into that second portion of the criminal affidavit for the probable cause, which led to the seizure of all of that material from the Fulton County Elections Office. So this is a clip from this morning. Kash Patel, just briefly, it's a 7-minute clip. We're not going to listen to the whole thing, but just him describing the investigation that is currently going on. don't anticipate the FBI giving us a bunch of detailed information just yet. Okay? Like I said, this is an investigation which is only just being made public, but we're not going to find anything else out until they actually charge these people criminally.
About in general, or this one specifically, take time to develop. We have to go out and conduct investigations, interrogations, interviews, collect information, data, and synthesize them with our brilliant partners at DOJ to present. And that's what I want to highlight. The FBI and DOJ presented this information to a judge in Georgia, where they determined, the judge, that there was a finding for probable cause, following the constitutional precepts that are necessary to safeguard an investigation.
So remember that. The next time you have a leftist come to you and say Trump is just trying to get revenge, Trump is just directing his DOJ to go after Fulton County. It was a Fulton County judge, a judge there, who looked at the evidence presented by the FBI and said there is probable cause for the FBI and the DOJ to go into Fulton County and seize this material. Okay? It's not simply Pam Bondi making a decision on her own. It's not just Kash Patel willy-nilly going out and saying, I'm going to get this person. The process is working. Oh, shit. I did not mean to close that. All right. So moving from Fulton County to Michigan. Now, the state of Michigan is attempting currently to dismiss a lawsuit that is seeking absentee ballot info. The Michigan Bureau of Elections is currently asking the Michigan's Court of Claims to dismiss with prejudice a lawsuit brought by the Michigan Fair Election Institute. They're demanding access to public information about Michigan elections. The Fair Elections Institute is saying that the state of Michigan produced a report summarizing data. So because they produced that report, they want to see the underlying data that created the report. Following the primaries in 2024, the Bureau of Elections redesigned a standard report called the Entire State Elections Voted List. Election data investigations were quick to notice that the redesigned report was no longer providing crucial details about absentee ballots. But the report could only be made, theoretically, if that information existed. So the investigators at the Fair Elections Institute, they want access to that missing data. They've submitted a FOIA, and the request was made on October 20th of 2025. They asked the Bureau of Elections to provide copies of the underlying records referenced by the entire state next election voted list. In this motion for summary disposition that the state of Michigan filed on Monday, the Bureau of Elections claims it doesn't have the records that are requested. Isn't that interesting? Sounds very similar to Fulton County. Trust me, bro, our elections are safe. You can't say the elections are safe if you don't have the information that you're relying on to make that decision or to present that claim to the people. So, in a sworn affidavit, the Deputy Director of Elections, Adam Fracassi, explained the basis for the denial. According to Fracassi, the BOE is interpreting the Fair Elections Institute's FOIA request as a request for documents that triggered the data entries populating the report. Very interesting. Patrice Johnson is the founder and chairperson of MEFI, and she said the information the state provided quoted some totals. We are simply asking to see how things were added up. Johnson also said if they claim the answer is 4, we have a right to see if they added 2 plus 2, 1 plus 3, or 0 plus 4. Nobody would accept a bank statement that only gives totals. Fracassi explained how the system works. Clerks enter data into the qualified voter file, which is something that the Department of Justice, Harmeet Dillon, and the Civil Rights Division have requested, but have thus far been unable to obtain because the state is denying them access as well. Based on documents such as voter registration forms, absent voter applications, and absent ballot return status. The Bureau of Elections does not have access to those documents. According to Fracassi, the Bureau does not receive or maintain these records. Fracassi is saying the records that the MFEI want are not at the state level. They are scattered across hundreds of clerks' offices. So the motion to dismiss that they filed says that the MFEI's lawsuit fails to identify any responsive documents in the Bureau's possession that were not produced. MFEI officials believe the Bureau of Elections could be deliberately misinterpreting the FOIA request, sending investigators on a wild goose chase for documents when the QVF data is at the heart of the request, data that is collected electronically and maintained at the state level in actuality. Tom Lambert is the lawyer for the Fair Elections Institute, and he notes that the Bureau of Elections denied the FOIA request out of hand within 3 days of receipt. He says BOE could have reached out for clarification, but instead they immediately denied the request in full. And then they try to have it dismissed with prejudice, which means that the Fair Elections Institute can never come and ask for that information again. We were advised to expect a motion to dismiss from the BOE. Naturally, the BOE, as the defendant, will try to have the lawsuit dismissed. The focus of the dispute is on what is a reasonable interpretation of the FOIA request. That is what the Court of Claims Judge Seema G. Patel will have to decide. So they clearly do not want anybody looking at this information. It's very similar to what we're seeing play out right now in Fulton County. We also are now going to jump to Minneapolis and the state of Minnesota. We've got some news coming from the federal government and the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. They have just terminated St. Paul's participation in the Fair Housing Assistance Program. This is the federal program that provides funds to local government agencies that enforce fair housing laws. In a letter to the city written by HUD, they said their decision was based on the fact that St. Paul's Department of Human Rights and Equal Economic Opportunity, also known as HERO, failed to notify HUD about changes to state and local laws that govern fair housing. Because under federal law, local government agencies can participate in the Fair Housing Assistance Program and receive federal funds for the purpose of enforcing fair housing laws. However, participation in that program requires local agencies to maintain housing laws that are substantially equivalent to the Fair Housing Act. This is the federal law that bans discrimination in housing based on some particular characteristics, notably race, sex, religion, and some other categories. Now, according to HUD, HERO's certification to participate in the Fair Housing Assistance Program was renewed in November of 24, but HERO never told HUD about changes to St. Paul's Human Rights Ordinance and state law that occurred in the prior 2 years. So HUD told Alpha News the city's human rights ordinance was altered to add sexual or affectional orientation and status with regard to public assistance as protected statuses. HUD said those categories are not covered by the Fair Housing Act, and because of the alleged failure to disclose those changes, HUD says the federal government did not have the opportunity to conduct a substantial equivalence review. That review is what would have determined whether HERO was aligned with federal law. Because HERO failed to notify the department when the Human Rights Ordinance was changed, violating both the terms of a Memorandum of Understanding and failing to meet their obligations under federal regulations, we are not renewing certification and withdrawing HERO from the Fair Housing Assistance Program. The department's decision not to renew certification and to terminate HERO from the Fair Housing Assistance Program is supported by HERO's repeated failures to notify the department of changes to their applicable ordinance and staffing changes and to follow the 2025 funding guidance concerning the filing of unique cases, as well as their prior well-documented substandard performance. And that decision is effective immediately. This is likely going to have quite an effect on St. Paul, and this organization is no longer going to be able to participate in a lot of the programs that HUD oversees. They're not going to get the money, and if they want to get it, they're going to have to try to recertify. Don't know if that's going to happen or if they're just going to let it go by the wayside, but I would imagine they're probably going to try to recertify because they are servicing a lot of people who are likely receiving Section 8 and other housing and urban development programs. Now, as we all know, Tom Homan went to Minnesota to meet with Governor Walz and Mayor Fry and to hopefully strike a deal so that ICE would be able to operate in the cities and overall in the state of Minnesota, and that they would be able to do their jobs without having the type of resistance they've seen up until this point. Well, sending Tom Homan appears to be the way that all of this is going to get worked out. So he held a press conference earlier today, and he announced that we have, in fact, reached a deal with state and local officials and with Attorney General Keith Ellison. Homan told reporters that Minnesota officials have agreed to hand over criminal aliens to ICE. This is a 180-degree turnaround from what Minnesota was doing before. As you know, what they would previously do would be to let people go, and they would not notify ICE if they even had them in custody. They would not honor detainers. Now they are going to be honoring detainers, and they are not going to set people free into the wild. And it means that ICE is going to be able to show up at jails and prisons when these people are going to be released. They will be immediately arrested, and then they will be extricated and removed from the country. Let's go ahead and hear it from Tom Homan so that we can see how he characterizes it.
Sanctuary cities are sanctuaries for criminals and endangers the residents of the community. To be clear, we did not agree with Minnesota state and local officials that they would be involved in immigration enforcement. I didn't ask them to be immigration officers. I'm asking them to be cops working with the cops to help us take criminal aliens off the street. What we did agree upon is not to release public safety arrests back in the community, and they could be lawfully transferred to ICE. I'll speak more about that. I will highlight that the Minnesota State Prison System under the Department of Corrections have been honoring ICE detainers. And we appreciate that important collaboration, and we're going to expand upon that.
So if you look at what President Trump asked for before we sent ICE into Operation Metro Surge in Minneapolis-St. Paul, this is what President Trump said he wanted. All he wanted was for the cooperation of local law enforcement to ensure that these people were not released back into the community so that they could be arrested and deported by ICE. Of course, what they got was 3,000 ICE and CBP agents on the streets, a whole lot of resistance from the local commies, and, of course, the deaths of a couple of local residents. All of that could have been avoided. They have consistently said that they're not going to enforce immigration laws. That's, again, not what's being asked for. All they want is for the detainers to be honored and for the lawful transfer of people who don't deserve to be in this country. He also went on to note that officials are going to be notifying ICE when dangerous criminal illegal aliens are being released so that they can be picked up at that point as they walk out the door. Attorney General Keith Ellison clarified for me that county jails may notify ICE of the release dates of criminal public safety threats, again, so ICE can take them into their possession. ICE agents are now, as a result, going to be pulling back in Minnesota so they can focus their targets elsewhere. It will no longer be necessary to have so many ICE and CBP agents on the streets because they're going to know where these people are at all times. Now, very importantly, Tom Homan talks about the drawdown here and exactly how many people are going to be necessary to maintain.
This is common sense cooperation that allows us to draw down on the number of people we have here. Yes, I said it. Draw down the number of people here. Because we have the efficiency and safety of the jails and the prison. Matter of fact, I have staff from CBP and from ICE working on a draw-down plan. What does that look like based on the cooperation? What does that look like based on how many targets we have left to find?
The surge itself, the 3,000 agents that were sent into Minneapolis, were meant to be a pressure point on Tim Walz and Jacob Frey, because the public relations disaster of having those agents on the ground, not for the government, not for ICE, not for CBP, but for Jacob Frey and Tim Walz, was meant to be a point of stress. It worked. And this, if you look at President Trump's deal-making prowess that we have seen exhibited over the last several months, it falls directly in line with the way he's done everything. I've used on a number of occasions the example of Greenland. What President Trump does is he tells people what he wants. He gives them an opportunity to give them what he wants. And then when they don't give him what they want, what he wants, he asks for a lot more. And then he positions himself in a very antagonistic fashion to force them to relent and eventually give him what he asked for in the first place. In the point of Greenland, President Trump said, we need Greenland for the safety and security of America. For a national security strategy, Greenland is essential. They said, you cannot have Greenland. You cannot have any part of Greenland. We won't even talk to you about it. So then President Trump amps up the rhetoric. Eventually, it gets to the point where we may invade Greenland and we might just take it. So then at that point, they say, okay, fine. We don't want you to invade Greenland. We are afraid because we know that if that happens, NATO is going to dissolve. The United States is more powerful than any of us. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to give you possession of everything that you already have, the multiple bases that you're already controlling, some other places that will be necessary for you to have strategic national security control. And in addition to that, you also get access to the entirety of the Arctic Circle. You now control the Arctic Circle. You're also going to get mineral rights, so you can go ahead and make money off of the deal. And remember, President Trump even offered them $700 billion for the country, and he was willing to give $100,000 to every single resident of Greenland. When that wasn't enough, when they refused to accept that, that's when he said, we're just going to invade. And then they said, Uncle, you can have whatever you want. And so then he goes back to the bare minimum, only what is necessary to achieve our goals. Now we have achieved the exact same thing here in Minnesota. Now, he also went on later to say that police chiefs would respond to 911 calls and guard immigration agents from activists and agitators, which is another one of the reasons that the drawdown is even possible.
Law enforcement officers engaging in impeding and obstruction and assault is never okay, and there will be zero tolerance. You interfere, impede, assault ICE officers, you will be arrested. Like I said a bit earlier in my meetings with Governor Walton, Ellison, and Frey, as well as state and local law enforcement, I appreciate they acknowledge this, that public safety should be paramount.
Now, after everything that we've seen on the streets of Minnesota and everything that Fry and Walz and Ellison have said, everything that they've directed police to do to not assist, to basically allow these guys to be attacked, think about what the people of Minnesota are now going to think of these three guys after believing that they had the total support against ICE of these individuals. They already walked into Tim Walz's office and took it over the other day after he had a phone call with President Trump. Now they have lost all luster in the eyes of these radical left-wing protesters. Now, so the question came up whether or not the federal government was just going to ignore the people who don't have criminal records. Tom Homan says, no, that's not what's happening. The focus is on the people that we told you we wanted to focus on. We want to arrest the people who are violent criminals. But if you're in the country illegally, you're still a criminal. And if we come across you, you will be arrested.
Definition now.
All operations will be targeted, but the prioritization are going to be criminal aliens, public safety threats, and national security threats. Marcos and his staff, we got to allow them. We got to allow them to keep us busy. So that would be our focus.
That is enough that's what there is not going to be a focus on people who have no other crimes except for their status.
If you're in the country illegally, you're never off the table. You know, but privatization doesn't mean you forget about everybody. So let me say this. If the message we send is you can enter this country illegally, it's a crime, don't worry about it. You can have your due process, show up in court, not show up in court, get ordered removed, don't worry about it. Unless you commit a serious crime, you're good to go. If that's the message we send to the world, you're never going to fix this problem. The most vulnerable people in the world will make that dangerous journey like they did under the Joe Biden administration. Over 4,000 aliens died making that journey. And again, a significant increase in sex trafficking. Because when they did that and opened those borders up saying, we're not going to detain you, we're going to give you free health care, we're going to fly you to the city of your choice, put you in a free hotel room, give you 3 meals a day, and give you work authorization, we're just going to bring you in. And when they did that, they sent a message to the whole world, you can come and do this. And what happened? They overwhelmed the men and women of the Border Patrol, where many days 70% of agents were pulled off that line. 70%. You don't think the criminal cars had a field day with that? They created gaps.
They did it on purpose. We all know that. Now, I saw somebody in the chat say Tom Homan seems much more mellow this time. This is all on purpose. Make no mistake, Tom Homan is a beast. Okay, this man knows his stuff. He's been in public service for almost 40 years. but they are positioning him as the alternative, the anti-Greg Bovino. All right, Greg Bovino was brash. He was up in everybody's face. He was out on the street. He didn't care what these people did or said. His goal was to get everybody off the streets. It's Tom Homan's goal too, but it's a softer, gentler approach. Again, this is all part of the art of the deal. Now, Tom Homan also addressed the question of the people who were just exposed in the signal chats that have been orchestrating all of these attacks on federal agents. Very important.
Well, first of all, about the organization and the funding of the attacks on ICE. I'm not going to answer a lot about that because I'm not going to show our hand, but they'll be held accountable. Justice is coming. Again, we got to all remember why.
So then he goes on to talk about the history of how we even got to this point, why it's as bad as it is. And what's most important there is that Tom Homan is assuring people, and he can't say anything else because it's an ongoing criminal investigation. You won't hear about it until those people are indicted. Now, we also, of course, have got to check in with Ilhan Omar. Couple of things over here on Rumble and Pilled. 1%er 10 says, what's the remedy? It depends on what your question was. If somebody could maybe figure out 1%er 10, if you tell me what is the remedy to which issue we were talking about. This was at 6:33. So I'm sorry, this was 30 minutes ago. I don't remember where I was 30 minutes ago. Perhaps we were still on the issue of Michigan. I mean, that if that's the case, then the remedy is the court case as it's going right now. Denise Ann says, have they not learned anything about Trump in these many, 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 many years that he has been in the public eye? Trump's first offer is always his best offer. The art of the deal. No, that's the thing. I said this yesterday. At this point, they ought to know how President Trump does business, but they don't. They have no clue. And this is why I love President Trump, because despite everything that he has said publicly, he's already told people how he does. He wrote a freaking book about it. They are so up their own asses. They can't get past it. They can't get out of their own way to do what's in their own best interest. And I love it. Mighty Patriot says, I can't wait till SOS Benson is handcuffed and jailed. Absolutely. Boys Blanc says, stay warm. It's been cold here in Southwest Florida. Yeah, it was in the 40s last night, and it's going to be in the 20s this weekend. No thanks, Joe says, thanks, Lisa and Zach. Great job. Properly researched reporting. You are the best. Thank you. God bless. Be safe. Thank you so much. Appreciate you, homie. Boys Blanc, thank you for the cookie. Ming65 says, thank you. RP78, thank you for the phone. Dixie, thank you for the can. Appreciate you. All right. Now, Ilhan Omar, of course, because she faked an attack on herself, has now blamed President Trump for that fake attack by 55-year-old Anthony Kazmierzak. And, of course, she is going to use this to attempt to position herself as some type of a victim who is now being targeted because she's Somali, because she's a woman, because she's a Democrat, because she's going up against President Trump. Let's take a listen. Got to get past this commercial.
That I wouldn't be where I am at today, having to pay for security, having the government to think about providing me security if Donald Trump wasn't in office and if he wasn't so obsessed with me. It is ironic that just last night he was on stage moments before I was attacked, talking about me. And then when asked about my attack, he said, I don't think about her. Does he not remember? Is he suffering from dementia?
Of course, he's not suffering from dementia. He just doesn't really care about Ilhan Omar. He's got people that are working on taking care of Ilhan Omar right now. Now, as I said yesterday, the fact that he was only charged with a third-degree misdemeanor assault at a state level was odd. That was an indication that the state of Minnesota was not truly interested in going after this guy for what he had done. This was an assault on a member of Congress. Well, guess what? The feds charged him with a federal assault charge. They also went and picked him up from the Hennepin County Jail and he is now in the custody of federal agents. DHS has, I don't know if it was DHS or if it was FBI that went and picked him up, but he is no longer simply being charged at the state level. And that means that Anthony Kazmarek, or whatever his name is, however you pronounce it, now has an incentive to tell what actually happened. If he was hired by Ilhan Omar, it looks to me that he may have been, because she stopped her speech, looked at him, gave him the nod, and then he squirted the apple cider vinegar at her. Then it is far more likely that he's going to have the incentive to tell the feds exactly what's going on, because otherwise he may end up in prison for a lot longer than he was told he would be in trouble for. He was probably looking at doing a comfy stint in the Hennepin County Jail for maybe 30 days or something like that. And I bet he probably also got a nice big fat check. Maybe he wasn't going to receive the check until he got out of the Hennepin County Jail. But now he's looking at time in a federal work camp or a federal penitentiary. Now, Ilhan Omar did an interview with CNN, and CNN also asked her about whether or not this attack was staged. Let us take a look and see how they position it.
It was at a separate town hall in Minnesota last night where this moment happened to Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. She was speaking when a man charged her at the lectern, and forensic examiners viewed your town hall. They wanted you to go get checked out. You said no, you wanted to.
Hold on.
Obviously, we checked in with you and your team last night. I know you were dealing with the aftermath of this. You continued your town hall. They wanted you to go get checked out. You said no, you wanted to finish speaking first. Why was that important for you?
Well, you know, I realized a long time ago that whether it is the president's dangerous rhetoric, whether it is the death threats that I get, whether it is the right-wing vitriol, or this man attacking me last night, their ultimate goal is to stop me from being a public servant, from serving my constituents with the dignity and the honor that they deserve. And last night, I was carrying out a promise I made to my constituents that I would hold a town hall every single month and be able to give them feedback on what I've been doing in Washington, D.C., and be able to answer their questions. And so it was really important for me in that moment to not allow this person intimidate me into running out of that room and canceling that town hall. My constituents deserve to have their congresswoman continue to do the work that they elected her to do, and that is my promise, and I will continue to do that.
I mean, and you were someone, you and I've spoken about this before, you have faced a lot of threats. I mean, what was going through your mind in that moment? It must have been scary as well.
Well, I thought...
Yeah, and it was disgusting and cowardly, obviously. And he is now facing charges, potentially federal charges from Capitol Police. And
yeah, they're supposed to take him into federal custody tomorrow, so charges should be coming at some point tomorrow, is my understanding.
Was he known to your team before this? Had he been on any kind of radar of y'all's or anything?
No, I don't think any of us have had a personal interaction with him. He wasn't flagged in the system when, you know.
They did have personal interactions with his ex-wife, though. So in that respect, he likely would have been known to Ilhan Omar. And again, considering the fact that she gave a little nod, I think that there must be some type of relationship. Given the fact that we will now have a federal investigation into this incident right here, I would think they're probably going to be looking at his communications. They're going to be looking at his movements. They certainly will be looking at his bank account.
We'd asked our team to look to see. I don't think, it is not my belief, although we continue to dig into it, that he's attended a previous town hall of mine either.
Okay, and as obviously we've seen his past political post and what he himself has said. I mentioned the president's response where he told ABC News just a few hours after this happened, she probably had herself sprayed, knowing her. Before you respond, I do want to remind everyone that when President Trump was nearly assassinated, you responded and said, we condemn acts of violence and pray for the victims, may calmness and decency prevail. And you said it was sad to hear the tragedy that had occurred. What went through your mind when you heard the president's response last night?
Well, the difference between the president and I is that I was raised to be a decent human being, and my faith teaches me to have compassion.
She doesn't answer in regards to whether or not it was potentially staged. Of course, the only thing she can do is try to draw this equivalence. President Trump was shot in the head. He almost died. He was millimeters away from being assassinated. Ilhan Omar was squirted with apple cider vinegar. I guess in a way you could say that this was a Islamic acid attack because, of course, Apple cider vinegar is technically an acid. But that's obviously not the same thing. Now, I do want to announce to you that apparently the Senate GOP has just struck a deal with President Trump to finally pass a law fully banning sanctuary cities. This would make the creation of sanctuary cities a crime, and governors, mayors who enforce sanctuary city laws locally could be sent to jail if they protect illegal aliens.
That's what this is about. No more Laken rallies. President Trump and I are never going to let that happen again. I don't mind trying to make ICE better. I don't mind having some reasonable reforms and learning from the mistakes. But here's what I'm telling my Democratic friends. That's a Band-Aid. The cancer is the sanctuary city policy adopted by 12 states that creates chaos for the rest of the 38. Yeah. So here's some news. I just concluded a deal with the White House to come up with a sanctuary city bill that would end sanctuary city policy forever. How? I will make it a federal crime for a state or local official to defy federal law on immigration. So going forward, if my bill passed, these mayors and these governors who defy federal law that have been on the books for 30 years could go to jail. If you want to...
So here's my question. If they have to worry about the filibuster, how are they going to pass it in the Senate? They could pass it in the House, but how are they going to pass it in the Senate? I don't know. But what I can tell you is that earlier today, the Senate blocked a measure to advance government funding in a 45 to 55 vote. The deadline for the government to shut down is Saturday. Looks like it's going to shut down. 7 Republicans joined Democrats to block the funding packages, which, of course, includes that money for the Department of Homeland Security, effectively defunding ICE and Border Patrol. GOP Senators Ron Johnson, Mike Lee, Ashley Moody, Rick Scott, and Tommy Tuberville joined the Democrats. Now, there are several people there that I really like. I'm interested to know exactly why they did this. Senate Majority Leader John Thune also voted no, but this allowed him to bring the vote to the floor again. Senator Rick Scott said he might force the Senate to vote on the SAVE Act as part of the government funding deal as the shutdown looms. Okay, so I think that this goes back to what Anna Paulina Luna said the other day, that they are trying to force the passage of the SAVE Act. And let's go ahead and take a listen to what Rick Scott said.
I'm in between votes. I want to give you a quick update, and I need your help. Let my colleagues know how important this is to you. Number 1, pass the SAVE Act. No illegals vote in our elections. Number 2, stop the earmarks. We can't have all this wasteful spending. So I hope you let my colleagues know how important this is to you.
So we had said before, if the government shuts down and the only way to reopen the government is to include the passage of the SAVE Act along with it, then that is how we get past the Democrat filibuster. It's actually a brilliant plan. Now, even though the government may shut down, I believe that, like before, ICE and Border Patrol would not go home. They would continue to stay on, and they would continue to engage in the activities that they've been doing. Now, Senate Democrats are willing to support 5 other bills in this package. However, they have reiterated that this bundle would easily pass if given the chance, if only they would remove the funding for ICE and DHS. Clearly, that's not going to happen. So I think that what we're seeing here is a defection for a strategic purpose so that they can ensure the SAVE Act will actually be passed and go through. They will have to bundle it with the funding bills for the federal government. And I got to be honest, I am perfectly fine with the government once again shutting down, because ultimately it's going to be because the Democrats don't want ICE to be funded. That's not going to happen, though. All right. Real quickly, I wanted to play this little memorial here that Senator Elizabeth Warren created for Alex Preddy. Alex Preddy, the gentle hero of Minneapolis. It's beautifully overlaid on that video that we just watched yesterday.
Caring for people was at the core of who he was. He was incapable of causing harm. Alex carried patience, compassion, and calm as a steady light within him. Even at the very end, that light was there. I recognized his familiar stillness and signature calm composure. Caring for people was at the...
This is cinema. This is absolute cinema. Totally love it. All right. Now, I need to refresh. Give me just one moment. Couple of quick clips of protesters being arrested. Here we have the the Minneapolis Police Department out on the streets in full riot gear. This is at a hotel in Minneapolis last night. Again, this never happened before. This is all part of President Trump's deal making with the state and local government in Minnesota. Forcing Tim Walz and Jacob Fry to capitulate and take part in crowd control, which of course they never were willing to allow before. A whole slew of arrests took place last night. Here is another angle from outside the hotel.
I'm outside.
Dozens of arrests took place at the Graduate Hotel last night.
All right, I'm outside the Graduate Hotel here on the University of Minnesota campus in Minneapolis right now. And after multiple warnings, officers have moved in and they are making dozens of arrests. I repeat, dozens of arrests. I've seen at least 50 to 60 people rounded up. They're all sitting down across the street. Media is not being allowed to cross the railroad tracks right now, but again, we are being kept on this side so the officers can continue to do their job. And if you can see behind me, you have the buses with the bars, and that's where all of the suspects are being.
All of the suspects, as they were arrested, were loaded onto buses and taken off-site. So that they could be brought to, I believe, the Hennepin County Jail. Now, yesterday I mentioned that 25% of all ICE arrests across the United States are taking place in Texas. Texas is a very different situation than what we're seeing in Minnesota. There are still the efforts of protesters at federal buildings to try to disrupt. However, the officers in Texas are not nearly as patient as what we're seeing in Minnesota. Tear gas, crowd control, dispersal. I love it. I love seeing them actually enforce the law. Now, here also in New York City last night at the Hilton Hotel, a whole group of protesters stormed this hotel, Hilton Hotel, and the New York City police came in and very quietly dispersed the situation.
We are here.
Complaining here. They want you guys out of the hotel. All right, I'm going to give a warning. I'll give you a couple minutes. I'm going to make the second warning, but after that, we have to start making arrests, okay? All right? Let anybody reach that point, okay?
Here we go, boys. Take them out.
Hang us and kill Trump's us! Oh, well, I ain't seen no resist. I ain't seen no resist.
And, of course, they had a bus in New York City as well.
But some of us are pissed.
The rest of the protesters were ultimately removed. Now, I have an update on that woman that we spoke about yesterday, Heidi Scholes of Groveland, Massachusetts. You might remember her. She was one of the people who was attempting to dox Todd Lyons and his family. And Blue Lives Matter reported her address to the ICE watchers as the location of one of the officers who was involved in the shooting with Alex Preddy. Well, I guess they also told ICE Watch where her work was as well. She's now made the announcement that after doxing the ICE director and his family, she has also lost her job. She made the announcement privately on a local community group and is upset that people dimed her out. So, of course, this was brought to us to high five all of you for pushing back against evil. Heidi Scholes of Groveland, Mass. posted the home address of the ICE director all over the internet, encouraging protesters to head to his house. His own children and wife have been made targets thanks to Heidi and her minions. Heidi's Facebook profile says she's radicalized on basic decency, which is pretty ironic considering there's nothing decent about doxing women and children. Let's be clear, you target federal law enforcement and their families and you make our naughty list. And you don't want to make our naughty list because our team is made up of trained warriors, law enforcement, combat veterans, and people who are really, really good at unmasking and exposing evil. Go ahead and F around leftists, you'll find out. So here is Heidi's post. I just want to warn people about what happened to me. Someone in this group posted about me and the protest at Todd Lyons on Blue Lives Matter. Someone else posted it on X saying that I was threatening law enforcement. All my personal info went viral. Since then, I have been inundated with threatening messages and phone calls. They flooded my place of employment on Sunday, and I lost my job because of it. My fault for thinking I could trust everyone was here for the right reasons, and also my fault for posting the map. I realize I should not have done that. So be smarter than me. There are truly a lot of evil people out here, and obviously a few of them are lurking here. Whoever it was, I hope you are pleased with yourself. I know your lot loves to see people hurt. Well, I am actually very proud of that having taken place. You got everything you deserved, Heidi. All right, now, also a transgender trans-Tifa activist who threatened Representative Nancy Mace has just been charged with attempted murder in Oregon. You might remember last May, a trans activist and Antifa member made a death threat against Nancy Mace of South Carolina. He is now behind bars in Oregon, having been charged with the attempted murder of another man. It just goes to show a lot of these people are completely off balance and will repeatedly cause trouble unless they are stopped. This biologically male transgender member of the domestic terrorist group Antifa, who was not prosecuted when he posted an implicit death threat against South Carolina Republican Representative Nancy Mace last May, is now in a women's prison in Oregon and facing charges of attempted murder. This blood is on the hands of every prosecutor who looked at this threat and looked away. I pray for the safety of the women he is housed with, Nancy Mace said. This transgender individual was named Rem Heathen. Their real name is Michael Richard Fadick. In May of 2025, Fadick posted the graphic on Instagram depicting a gun pointed directly at Mace's face, and the message was unmistakable. He wanted her dead. Now, let me see what happened with this incident right here. Well, I guess this guy is in the hospital. On December 21st, Fadick allegedly shot a man in Portland, Oregon. The victim survived with serious injuries. Fadick was arrested January 8th in California and now is facing attempted murder charges. A man is in the hospital because the system failed to stop a violent extremist when it had the chance. When prosecutors ignore death threats, they don't just fail one victim, they create more. All right, we're going to go through these final thank yous over here on Pilled and on Rumble. And before we do, I have one final message from our friends on Rumble. Parents, real talk for a second. America is about to hit a huge milestone. We are coming up on America's 250th birthday. 250 years of freedom, grit, and sacrifice, and the greatest experiment in self-governance the world has ever known. This is the perfect moment to help your children or grandchildren understand why this country matters. Not just fireworks and hot dogs, but the story behind it all. There's a free guide called The Kid's Guide to America's 250th Birthday, and it's honestly a great way to introduce kids to how America began and who the founding fathers were, what they risked, and why the ideas they fought for still matter today. The guide sends kids back to the moment when the brave men who signed the Declaration of Independence did so knowing full well they were risking their lives for freedom. It breaks it all down in a way that kids can actually understand and enjoy without watering it down or turning it into boring schoolwork. If you care about raising kids who know where this country came from and why it's worth preserving, this is something you're going to want to grab. The best part, it is totally free, completely free with this special offer. You just pay shipping and handling. It's only $2. So just head to freeusabirthday.com. That is freeusabirthday.com. And the Kid's Guide to America's 250th Birthday is yours today. America's story matters. Make sure the next generation knows it. You can also use the QR code on screen or the link that you see in the chat. Thank you very much to them. And the final thank yous to our friends over here on Pilled. Thank you to Redgun51 for the can. Thank you to Sean Joe for the shades, the can, and the cookie. I appreciate it. And then, 1%er10 says, what's the remedy for the stolen election? Well, the remedy is to prove that the fraud took place and then to prosecute and indict and then prosecute and then jail all of the people who were involved. In terms of, I mean, I don't know, maybe Trump gets a third term. I don't know. Probably not, because he's serving a second term right now. I don't know that he would even want to do a third term. I don't know if that's something that they would even bother to do. But I think that it's important to remember that it wasn't just Trump who had the election stolen from him. There are a lot of people holding office right now who are doing so illegally because of that stolen election. So I think that ultimately the remedy is probably going to be to ensure that it doesn't happen again by passing the SAVE Act, getting rid of electronic voting machines, one-day voting, voter ID, etc. And then, of course, you also have to clean the voter rolls, which is actively happening right now. But ultimately, the remedy is to put people in prison for it. Because if people understand that they can go to prison for breaking the laws, they are less likely to do so. But yeah, I mean, I don't think we're already, almost 6 years beyond the 2020 election. So here we are. We're going to move forward and then prosecute all the people who were involved. Thank you, 1%er. And then Cyrus the Great 87. I got $50 that says Trump has funding slashed in another agency to keep funding ICE because he knew this was coming. LOL. So I think that that won't be necessary because ICE will just continue to work and they'll take back pay when they come back. And there are plenty of agencies that I would love to see slashed. I think we spend way too much money as it is. Perhaps in order to get the funding deal passed, they will have to stop funding something else in order to ensure that there is even money to go around. Who knows? But I see this as a calculus to ensure that the SAVE Act does get passed because that filibuster is a real son of a bitch. Deplorable too. I mean, all of these things. We would have to end up looking at every single jurisdiction. It's not just at the federal level. It's not just at the state level. It's, of course, at the local level. But yeah, this is going to have to be a case-by-case basis. And I have no idea what that looks like because it is huge. There are a lot of people holding office at all levels of government who are fraudulently in that position and the people who had races stolen from them. So we'll see where this goes. But ultimately, right now, I'm just focused on the investigation there in Fulton County, and then that's going to snowball. That's going to go other places. All right, you guys, don't forget about the sponsors of the program. All of these sponsors, when you support them, you are actively going to be supporting us here at the channel. Of course, my friend Jess over at goallgood.com/redpill78. When you get any of her bundles, you will get a discount and you will also get a free sample of the Tallow sunscreen. That is a great thing to do for Valentine's Day. It's good through Valentine's Day. Then, of course, my friends over at onenessdrops.com/redpill78. You'll save 15% off of all of their chlorine dioxide products, also their mullein extract, their soursop tincture, their DMSO, which I pretty much use on a daily basis. My friend Mike Lindell over at mypillow.com. Not only will you save up to 80% off of Mike Lindell's amazing American-made products like the Giza Dream Sheets, the My Pillows, the slippers, the bathrobes, all of that. You will also, of course, be supporting his run for Minnesota governor, and he is in the front runner at this time. My friend Jordan over at consciousstrength.net/RP78. You'll save 10% off of everything Jordan offers, including the methylene blue, which is something that I use every single day. And my friends over at rncstore.com/RP78 to save 10% off of their apricot products, including B17 and their bitter apricot seeds. They also have apricot skin oil, which is very good. B17 is something that everybody here should know. There's a great book about it by G. Edward Griffin, and I've done a couple of interviews with John Richardson Jr., which you can find on my Rumble channel and all of the places where I publish. So thank you for being here. Filter Dog 1, final thank you. Georgia or Bust, thank you for the can. And Mighty Patriot, thank you for the can as well. I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. I'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. for another episode of Red Pill News Live. Until that time, good luck. And God bless. Peace. Sending you guys over to Frank. Don't forget to hit that like button.